Thank you so much for being here, Ashante.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I have been looking at Gather, and it is such a stunning book that I am
Mhm.
so excited to be have in the world. But I wanted to ask because I'm always asking academics this, academics who are good writers, for you, where does the food writing and the food scholarship, where do they meet?
Um, that is a great question. And also thank you for saying I'm a good writer because sometimes I am not sure. As you probably know, like academia doesn't teach you to be a good writer. And so I think the first response to that question for me is really about storytelling,
Yeah.
deciding that um, for me, deciding that I wanted to be a good storyteller. And for me, food tells so many stories. You can go in so many, it makes the job easier to me, right? And so the intersection feels like where are the stories and where might I join it with some sort of structural commentary or critique.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And did you want to be a writer or did that emerge out of your scholarship? Oh.
Oh no, 100%. I tell people all the time that writer was the first identity I chose for myself. I was in second grade. We were supposed to say what we want to be when we grew up, and I stood up and I was the only person who said writer. So, and I'm sure like my peers are like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? You're supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. But I remember that moment quite vividly. And I had an elementary school principal, I would take stories that I would write to her, and she laminated them into what I call my first book. She took them
Oh,
all and was like, "This is your first book."
that's amazing. And so
Yeah.
where did academia come in? How did it kind of catch you?
Yeah, I think it's equal parts like I like reading and studying, and the other part was at some point in my high school journey, I was introduced to Zora Neale Hurston as a writer,
Mhm.
and so had kind of clung to her as a writer. By the time I got to college, I also understood now that she was doing this thing called anthropology that I had no clue what it was. But I did have this sense of like, wow, if she did this academic study, maybe something about that helped her be a good writer. That was my thinking as a 20-year-old. And so I
Mhm.
think that's the first place where I started thinking maybe academia. And then secondly, I was always interested in social justice kinds of things. And to be quite honest with you, I was thinking, if I'm a Black woman with a PhD, maybe I can do some good things in the world with it. Use these kind of research thinking skills toward making the world better. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, can you tell me about where you grew up and what you ate?
Yes. So deep East Texas or East Texas, not so deep. Crockett, small town of 75. Well, actually, it's less than 7,500 people now. Population is dwindling. I grew up in a very rural area, even outside of that town. And so my grandmother who lived next door, she grew a lot of things that we ended up eating. It was the quintessential people talk about like, oh, the old days when people didn't lock their doors. I'm like, I'm not that old, and that's how I grew up. So it was definitely that kind of community. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this. Like, people talk a lot about fast food, and fast food was not a big part of my life. Actually, fast food factored in mostly because I was an athlete, and a lot of times
Yeah.
after games and stuff, we would stop to get something quick to eat. But in my daily life, there was a lot of cooking. I learned to cook early, even just short things like my grandmother would cook like mackerel from the can. So that was that's one of the things I learned to cook from her very early. Um, she, yeah, I keep mentioning my grandmother because my mother worked a lot. And so my grandmother was a big caretaker for us. She's the person I learned how to make biscuits from. Yeah, like we ate a lot of things that required cooking and not a lot
Yeah.
of prepackaged things, I would say, even though I don't think any of the adults in my life had time to
Yeah.
really, honestly, really be doing all this cooking, but they did. And then later, as we got older, we did a lot of it too.
Yeah. Well, who has had the biggest influence on how you eat and why?
Yeah. Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I would love to say, like, I mean, certainly how I grew up, but by the time I went to graduate school, I was exposed to like lots of different kinds of people and et cetera. And as a part of my commitment to the food world, I was like, I'm going to become vegetarian, then I'm going to become vegan. So part of my grad school, I was vegan. And I remember having this moment where I was co-organizing this public anthropology conference, and one of my cohort members, who's my really dear friend, as we were talking about the food piece, she's also vegan, but I would describe her as a militant vegan. I mean, nothing, yeah, you're shaking your head, so I know you know
I
what I
know.
mean. Like nothing mattered outside of that. And I remember that being a real moment where I was like, oh, this level of privilege that is not always, but in this moment attached to veganism, such that we couldn't see anything outside of it, was so jarring. And I went to go have a hamburger after that meeting, which was not a good idea. But it was like this moment where I was like, oh man, like, um, am I clear about why I'm choosing veganism? And
Right.
if I'm not, like, if I am, okay, can I articulate that? And if I'm not, then what do I think this means about me? That was such a pivotal moment because it started helping me think about integrating things from my different class experiences, like growing up slash now being in grad school, just cultural experiences and even when I was vegan, my mom, when I remember one time going home and we were going to the grocery store and she's like, okay, well, get whatever it is you want. I was like, whatever, just cook. And she said, I don't know what to cook for you anymore. And that was a real eye-opening moment
Yeah.
as someone who thinks a lot about how food connects us. It was a moment where I was like, oh, food, how what I'm choosing is not bad, but it is potentially creating barriers in ways
Yeah.
that I don't want. And I didn't realize that. So I think like certainly my upbringing, the desire to be connected to other people through food. I think all the things I've learned and studied about the food system, many of them do not spark joy. So has had an influence on me. And then I have a collection, a pretty good collection of cookbooks. And so I would say like Black Black women chefs and cookbook authors have really influenced me, like through their storytelling and the recipes that they share. So yeah, I think those are my main influences.
Well, I think that that was just a good argument against militant veganism, where it's like there's nothing that'll make you want a burger more than being in a room with a militant vegan.
Oh my gosh, I had never experienced I mean, it was so visceral. And this was after I'd watched, again, this is someone I'm still really good friends with, but this was after I'd watched her throw out cow's milk, like
Mm,
whole containers,
yeah,
as an expression of her commitment to veganism. And in my mind, I was thinking, but oh my goodness, like, isn't part of what we're also supporting is choice and people
yeah,
making educated choices,
yeah.
certainly, but like they're making a choice and also holy moly waste, like we're just gonna go throw this away. Like, so it was just a real visceral moment for me where it's like all of this is messy. We're all making
Yes.
individual choices in an unethical system. We're
Yeah.
doing the best that we can. And that really taught me a lot about having grace for other people.
No, absolutely. It's so important to just accept the messiness, which is something that's difficult to communicate sometimes.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
I think people on both sides of that are reluctant to see the messiness, whether it's, people who don't want to think about food and people who do want to do the best that they possibly can. It's
Yeah,
that's on those extreme ends we lose the humanity of it. That's so
I think that's
important.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how would you describe your appetite today?
Oh man. I would describe my appetite as curious. Like I'm pretty open to trying most new things,
Yeah.
at least once. I would describe it as like, man, I love a decadent meal.
Yeah.
I love like I want all the courses. Give me all the pretty details. I love that. I mean, I'm probably the, textbook, eating with your eyes first person because I just love pretty things. I gravitate a lot towards sweetness in my meals. I love, and it's, as I'm working on a project about sugar, that brings up complicated things, but I,
Yeah.
I am very drawn toward sweetness. I think lately, I'm trying to think of like something that I ate recently that I really enjoyed. Um, hmm. Oh, I have a food subscription service with like cooked food from chefs, local chefs. And I had the best cabbage recently.
Ooh, they're saying it's the year of cabbage.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I am here for it. It was the best cabbage I have had maybe ever, but certainly in that I can remember. And I was just like, wow, I didn't know that I liked cabbage this much. So that was something that really caught me off guard in the best way. And then on the sweet side, I bake a lot. And lately, I've kind of been into perfecting mini bundt cakes, which
Ooh.
has been really fun. And so one that I really liked recently was like a strawberry cream bundt cake situation, which was really nice. And then lastly, I would say appetite wise, this is kind of both metaphor and literal. I've been really thinking a lot about waste and preservation and how we use things. And so I've been canning.
Oh, cool.
And that is not something I've ever done before. This is a new thing and it's really fun. And the first thing I canned was chow chow because I wrote about it in Gather and I was like, but I want to like practice this and perfect this. So I worked on a recipe for it and like started canning it and it's just been really fun. But it
That's
was a
awesome.
really beautiful way of thinking about how like we can be preserving things now for appetites to come.
Yes.
And I don't know, it just canning, something about canning made that feel really literal and visceral to me in a beautiful way.
Yeah. No, and I think it's so interesting how we reclaim these practices
Hmm.
and remake them for ourselves and the ways in which I think in the US we've been really a lot of the mainstream message has been, don't can, don't, waste everything. And
Hmm.
so and because there's always going to be
Yeah.
more, you can always go buy more. And so I do think like it's just such a great proposition to get back to that, of course, on like that just very obvious level of preventing waste. But I think also just imaginatively, like just kind of getting into the accepting what we have and
Yes,
making it
yes,
better and and saying I can have tomatoes in the winter if I just do this little bit of extra
yeah,
work now and that sort of a thing and kind of coming reclaiming the labor of food as an important sort of
yes.
craft. Yeah.
And an important everyday craft, right?
Yes.
Like that yes, there will be people who are elevated
Yes.
in their labor, kind of elevated in certain ways, but like I think that was the other cool thing about the canning piece. I'm like, wow, I'm just using tools that I already have
Yeah.
mostly. I had to buy some jars, but that's pretty much it. Um, in my kitchen and kind of doing it in between times of work and rest. And that was, I don't know, like I'm so deeply moved by the things that we do on an everyday basis
Yeah.
that we don't see as making a life, but they really are the building blocks of making a life. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, which is your favorite meal of the day and what's your favorite meal to eat outside the house?
Ooh, favorite
And
meal of the day.
yeah,
I'm gonna say dinner.
nice.
And yeah, I think dinner. I think because of what I said earlier about decadence,
Yes.
for whatever reason, we give ourselves permission to like have decadent dinners in a way that maybe I don't always see with breakfast and lunch. And my favorite thing to eat outside of the house, sometimes this is geography specific. So like for example, I always complain about being in Austin and not feel like I get really good Caribbean food, so
Mm,
I tend to eat it less outside the house. Um, but I love curries and I love ramen. So I
nice.
think of those two things as things that I don't think I have a skill set in making really well. And so I gravitate toward those outside of the house. And then of course I live in Austin and tacos are always on the
Yeah,
menu. Yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah, I think, ramen and curries, those are good things to eat, to kind of take off your plate, your own plate, because
Yeah.
it's too labor intensive and you just let the
Yeah,
experts handle.
exactly.
Well, for you, is cooking a political act?
I That's a great question. I'm gonna say yes with an asterisk.
Yes.
Okay. I think yes in the sense that like when I think of cooking, it's hard for me to not think about a gathering table alongside it. And
Yes.
so for me, cooking is a sort of labor that helps facilitate bringing people together, which I do think can be a political act and often
Yeah.
is a political act. And I think I read about this in Gather where after the election, the 2024 election, the first thing that I did was call people and say, come over, I'm going to cook and we can commiserate together and we
Yeah.
can, talk about what this means for us. Um, and I don't know that I'd ever done that before, but it really solidified to me how I see cooking as definitely related to politics in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And specifically in ways that are about like the so-called private space of the home and the kitchen. Like restaurants and chefs have been involved in political stuff all the time, but like seeing our homes as an organizing space, I think. Yeah, that's how I would say I think cooking is political.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you.